Good evening and welcome to Connection Cafe. Nearly forgot what I was going to say then. Welcome to the Connection Cafe. This edition is Yoga Journeys, and Yoga Journeys is an opportunity for MoreYoga to help amplify the voices of teachers of color. And we do that by me, Yvonne O'Garro, asking teachers of color the same 10 questions, but the answers are beautifully different. And this started up on the back of the Black Lives Matter protesting last year following George Floyd's killing. And Connection Cafe was born from the lockdowns, and the two have now morphed together to create this wonderful platform. So this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Rema Wilkens.
Hello. Hi, Yvonne.
Welcome, Rema. How are you?
I'm really well, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
I'm so glad to hear it. What in particular are you looking forward to?
All of it. I like the structure of it. I think it hits some key interesting themes in terms of just us as a community, questions that come up about being a yoga teacher. Questions about being a yoga teacher of color, questions about being a female yoga teacher versus a male yoga teacher, for example.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're looking forward to it. That's good.
There's going to be a lot of little bits and pieces. So it's all
good.
One of those things it's a very introspective job, I feel, as a yoga teacher, because you travel a lot and I think a lot when I travel.
Good.
That's my thinking time.
Good. Okay. So before we jump into the Yoga Journeys questions, I will say, obviously, because I know that you've made a shift. So when you're answering, please do bring in what's relevant for you, which might not necessarily be the pure yoga journey, but this is your journey. So it's about you sharing with us, what your journey is. So just before we step into the Yoga Journeys questions, is that lift pitch. So imagine you're in a lift with somebody and you've got 30 seconds to introduce yourself. How do you introduce yourself?
Oh gosh, that's hard. It depends on if I'm introducing myself as a yoga teacher or as a corporate person.
Do you ever introduce yourself as both?
Until now, never, because this is my first 3 weeks or 1.5 weeks actually of being both.
Okay. So imagine that you're doing 2 lifts. You do 30 seconds in one lift and you cross the path to go in another lift. Introduce yourself with both hats on.
So if I were a yoga teacher and I'm in that world, that frame of mind, I would introduce myself as Rema Wilkens. I teach Ashtanga yoga, Vinyasa yoga, Hatha yoga. And I am very, very passionate about a very safe practice and a compassionate teaching practice. So my practice tends to be, I would say, medium pace, but with a focus on alignment and breath. That would be me as a yoga teacher pitching myself.
Okay.
If I were pitching myself and I cross over to the other side, I would be pitching myself as a bit of a corporate warrior. I'm head of data analytics at a market research company. So my passion is data. It's about analyzing data and telling stories of humans, how we buy, how we sell, how we transform our personality as we go through a shop or a store to, how that becomes a commercial purchase. So that's sort of how I'd introduce myself if I am in my corporate world. I've done a bit of marketing, a bit of product marketing, product management, a bit of everything, really.
People shopping over the last 12 months must be fascinating.
And weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, I can quite imagine that must be quite interesting to see those shifts right now. If you're telling stories from data, what the last 12 months would have told us all must be fascinating.
It's fascinating. And weirdly human, because when we look at it from the point of view of just data and looking at it from a corporate world, we're looking at where we can make the next commercial decisions. But when you talk to everyday people, either the person at the store or the person who's delivering your groceries, it's a completely different world out there. And then when you think about maybe your elderly parents who might be needing that assistance of that delivery person to bring product to their store, there's so many things you can do with that in terms of just taking care of people who are out of touch with society because of COVID.
Right.
So it's a fascinating can of worms.
It sounds it. I'm going to meet you for a coffee one day to understand more, because
absolutely,
yeah, I have a pre-yoga, pre-HR. I had a retail background, so it's still kind of there, the interest to a degree.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about me. Thank you for the 2 different intros. Now we step into the Yoga Journeys questions. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, kicking us off. Honoring our ancestors, please share your family lineage.
My family lineage is actually really, really simple.
Okay.
What will complicate it is what comes later. But my family, I'm from South India. So my entire family was born in southern India in the town of Trivandrum, with a few exceptions, but almost everybody is born in Trivandrum, which is the capital of the state of Kerala in southwest India. And why it gets a little complicated is I was born there, and 2 months later I was put on a plane and we moved around the world.
Okay.
So my family and I moved from South India to pretty much all over the world. So yes, the lineage is Indian, South Indian, but we're wanderers.
Was that for your parents' work or business, or?
Yeah, my dad was in the Indian Foreign Service, so we
Right.
wandered all around the world, hence the mutt accent.
Where did you stay longest?
Delhi. So my father had a traveling job because of his role in the Foreign Service, but at some point, and I vaguely remember this conversation, I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and my mom and dad were having a conversation saying the kids need to learn India because they didn't want the children to be foreigners in their own country.
Right.
Because the assumption is we'd go back to India someday. So I have this vague recollection of this conversation between my parents, and they said the kids need to understand what the home country is like. And so at about age 12, I think, we moved to Delhi, and I spent a large chunk of time in Delhi. I did my high school there, university there, and then again continued to wander after that.
Right. Okay.
I just couldn't resist.
Yeah. Because it was in the blood, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think a bit of adventure, a bit of don't know what's there until you go and open the tin and see what's there. So it was just a little bit of that as well, I suppose.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So remember to add in whatever you feel is relevant. So where, when, and with whom was your first ever yoga class?
Okay. This is a funny one. So I took my first yoga class a little over 20 years ago. Well, actually a lot over 20. It must be 24 years ago, I think. It was in Monterey, California. I was doing my master's degree in California at the time. Yoga was not, I mean, yes, people in the West did yoga back 24 years ago. Of course they did. But it wasn't one of those things that was every street corner, there's a yoga studio. It was kind of more exclusive, I suppose. So I did my first yoga class in California in the university over there where I was doing my master's degree. I cannot tell you who taught me the yoga class because all I could remember was I was sneezing the entire time. Because it was on this dusty floor. It was not a very inspiring yoga experience, I have to confess.
Do you remember what style it was?
It claimed to be a hatha yoga class, but I couldn't tell you looking back 20 years if it actually was a hatha yoga class.
So did you stop going after that, or did you
I
try
went
the classes?
once. No, I went that one time and I was like, this is not my thing. I want nothing to do with this. And then after that, every so often I'd dabble in yoga. I'd go on a Saturday and do a practice
Hmm.
if I had time.
Hmm.
But it wasn't something that was deeply ingrained in me that I needed to get myself to. It was more, I have time, there's a studio next door, I'll
Hmm.
walk over.
Right.
And that was sort of my story for quite a bit of time after, I'd say at least 10 or so years after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with this sort of, fluctuating in out of yoga classes, what happened to make you want to teach? When did you realize you wanted to teach?
Yeah. So what happened was I would say about 15 years ago, I'd moved to the UK. I was relatively new to the UK at that time. Didn't have a lot of social life because I was new to the city, new to London, working insane hours in a corporate job and not
Hmm.
moving much. And I got this crazy idea that I should join the gym. Thought
Hmm.
I'd do little bit more being in a gym. And I went to the gym and found a yoga class. And I thought, okay, this would be a soft introduction into yoga.
Hmm.
It was not a soft introduction to yoga at all, but it was the best thing that ever happened. This yoga class was done by one of my favorite yoga teachers, James. He used to teach Ashtanga yoga. Absolutely fantastic teacher. He
Is
could
he still
tell.
practicing?
He doesn't practice anymore,
Okay.
but he had that ability to know exactly how each student felt as they walked through the door.
Mm.
It was quite incredible. So I went to his class. It was militant. It was really hard.
Wow.
It was a really, really hard class. And I came back from this lunchtime yoga class pretty sweaty,
Mm.
exhausted, somehow got through my day of work and went home and just crashed on the couch.
Wow.
And then I woke up the next day and said, I need to do that again.
That's good. So it was the Ashtanga practice
Yeah.
that drew you to the teaching.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was that got me along the path. It took a while. I wouldn't say, oh, I went to my first class and I was like, oh, this is my
Mm.
journey. But it was that motivated to be a regular practitioner of yoga and discipline the mind, which is
Yes.
such a big part of yoga. And a lot of people forget that yoga is about mental discipline as
Mm.
much as it is about the physical discipline aspect of it. And with that practice, and back then I used to do 6 days a week, regular 1.5 hours. I was really solid at my practice.
Mm.
And at that time, I realized, well, I love teaching, but I wasn't teaching yoga, but I used to do corporate training and stuff like that.
All right. Okay.
And so I knew I had this ability to explain things
Yes.
quite
And
well.
the engagement was there, and you didn't have the
And the
shyness.
talking,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And I knew I liked the practice of yoga and I
Hmm.
was good at it physically. So that combination, so I had this thing at the back of my mind thing, maybe one day. And it just kept sitting there in the corner of my head, being a maybe one day I'll
Mm.
training. Anyway, it didn't happen till much later. I did yoga teacher training in 2018, so not long ago.
So how long was the seed
Almost
permeating?
11 years.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
I
Well,
had
it
a
was
long
a thoughtful
journey.
process. Okay.
Well, it was a complex thing because at the time I really enjoyed my work.
Hmm.
It was hard work, but I enjoyed it. Um, I love the challenge of it, the mental exhilaration of working. So I didn't want to give up that.
Mm.
And I yeah, it just made sense to continue to work on my practice. And I had this dream that one day I'll just retire and be a yoga teacher. That was my plan.
That will still happen. You still got time for
It's
that.
still happening.
That could still
an ongoing
happen. It could
process.
still happen. Okay, so 2018 is when you started the teacher training after 11 years consideration.
Yeah, just living life and doing other things.
Okay, wonderful. So where, when, and with whom was your first teacher training?
So the teacher training, the first teacher training I did was in late 2018 with a lady called Umbra Vallo.
Mm-hmm.
She's an incredible teacher.
Is that in the UK?
Yeah, in the UK. I did
Okay.
it through Indaba Yoga.
Okay.
Umbra is, and the cool thing about this teacher of mine was she's a ex-prima ballerina. So I learned a lot, not just about the practice, but also this incredible amount of mental and physical discipline that you have as someone as in that sort of profession as a prima ballerina. She used to be a ballerina at the Birmingham Opera House or something like that. I don't remember the details of it right now. So not only did I learn the practice and the teaching aspect of it, but the rigor of it. It was done with so much rigor and exceptional professionalism, which helped me take that for when I went to go teach, you know, the exactness and the science of it and the energy that comes from the sort of spiritual side of it and the full-on immersion of it. It was a really, really good experience. So that was done in London in 2018. And it was a really good experience. I learned a lot. I learned how to, what I found interesting was learning that was a nice in between my professional corporate career, where I'd learned all these tricks of how to manage a crowd and how to train people and how to engage audiences and stuff like that. And then I could use those skills in my teaching of yoga. And then when and we'll talk about this more in a bit, but I could also then take the teaching aspect of yoga and apply it later in my corporate world as well. It's been this really nice symbiosis of using those skills in different ways.
How long was the training? Did you do it intensive or?
It was about 2 or 3 months, something like that.
So you did it as an intensive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was intensive. I remember I was quite exhausted by the end of it because I think, I don't know how other trainings work, but I guess it's quite similar. You have the test at the end of it where you show your skills that you've developed. And so all the students were taking each other's classes. Obviously, because the student teacher needs their students to teach.
You need bodies. You have to have bodies for the exam.
Have the bodies.
That's right.
I had, I think, taken about 8 different classes over the space of 2 days. So I'd done about 8 hours of yoga in the span of 2 days. And at one point, Umbra had said, "Oh, and for tomorrow, you're set up for these classes that you're going to take." And I just looked at her and I'm like, I think my body is broken. Like, I literally couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You've done too many classes now. You can just go home and rest, come back for graduation."
Amazing. Amazing. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
So cast your mind back to that training. How many people were on the training?
There were about 20-ish people on the training.
20.
Yeah, maybe give or take, maybe a little more, but approximately 20.
And of that 20, including yourself, how many people of color?
1, 2, about 5. There were about 5 of us.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a nice group because it was some people of color like myself and a few others. it was also nice because there were a few men on the training.
Okay.
And I remember having this conversation with my husband right before I started the training program with Umbra, and I said, I bet it's going to be, I'm going to
Female
be
dominated.
female dominated, not
Mm.
many people of color.
Mm.
And because that's how my experience with yoga studios were.
Right.
As a student, and I thought, I'll be the weird odd one out person, but you know, I'm going there to learn, so I
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
care what the physical makeup of the group is. And it was very, very pleasantly surprising to see this nice mix of gender and color and nationalities. So it wasn't just people from England or from the UK. It was, we had Italians, French, there were a couple of Germans on the training program.
Okay.
There was a guy from Madagascar on the training program. It was really cool. It was like a really
So
nice,
a real international mix
yeah,
on your training. Okay, excellent.
We had a Indian woman of Kenyan, a Kenyan woman of Indian descent. I always get this wrong.
Yeah. It's get it the right way around. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's me, who's as I said, a bit of a mutt, and then
I love the way you say that.
It was actually a really lovely group of people, and it brought diversity of thought as well, not just diversity of color and gender, but also thought, which I think is really, really important to any sort of group collective effort.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we're moving on to the wellness industry and the highs and the lows, from your perspective. So I always like to start with any lows, if there are any for you, and then end on any highs, again, if there are any for you. So wellness industries, lows, what comes to mind?
It's a tough nut to crack. That is probably the biggest low. I found it particularly hard when I started teaching, and it might have just been the timing. It might be that I'm not really that good with the hustle. I don't know what it is. I haven't fully dissected it, but I ran into a lot of barriers in the form of, oh, you need to be teaching for 2 years to work here with us.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this kind of reminds me of when I was 25 and I needed to have 10 years of experience to do a job. And it's like, I don't. And it was this constant frustration, because you knew you could do the job, and not only do the job, but do it well. And you also knew you could do the job locally, which as a yoga teacher, you would appreciate this. Just banging on tube stations and running around town is very exhausting and time consuming. And so my key thing was, I want to be able to teach somewhat locally. I don't want to travel 2 hours to get to a location.
No,
because it's just not worth it.
No.
You end up spending all the money in just your travel
money
card,
and time,
right?
gone. Yeah.
Forget about the money. So that was a very revealing thing for me, and it was a combination of the amount of time you spent, which you didn't get paid for, because you're traveling and nobody's paying for your travel time. You need 2 or 3 or 5 years of experience to teach, when I had nearly 15 years of practice at a very high level. And being able to articulate that because of my other experience, I found that quite frustrating. And the other thing that was quite on the low side is, I came very quickly to the realization that because, and this is a hot topic, we probably won't dwell too much on it, but there's a lot of people who teach yoga as a commodity. It's yoga teacher training is done to make money because of the structure of the industry. And so you end up having a huge variety of teachers, experience, qualifications, ability to teach, all vary. And it depends on so many factors into how you come into the job. And so, yeah, I found that quite frustrating.
Yeah.
But there's always a silver lining.
There's always a silver lining. What's the silver
otherwise
lining?
life wouldn't work.
Yes, exactly.
No, so I ended up just saying, I'm going to take a few I'm going to be rational about this because I don't want to kill myself. And so I started actually taking a few covers at gyms that were within range or studios that were within range. I happened to also apply to the MoreYoga Swadhyaya program.
Yay!
And got in, and it's fabulous. I have to say kudos to Becky and Charlotte for the program that I was in. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic teachers and a great experience, and a massive opening into that world, which has been very rewarding.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and then a couple of times I taught at a couple of gyms, and then people approached me and said, "Oh, I have a corporate class, and I think you'd be a great teacher for that."
Oh, great. Good.
Or I have a one-on-one client who happened to bump into me at a gym yoga session, and was like, "I'd love for you to teach me and my partner." And I'm like, "Sure. If it works, we'll make it happen."
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, so I found it's a bit of a word of mouth exercise for me because I'm not very good with or I don't like the hustle of marketing and Instagram and stuff like that. For me, it's a bit more, I do my practice, and which is my trade. I show it to you, and then you buy it after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's been actually much more positive experience for me than trying to bang my head against random studios which want 3 years of experience, which I didn't have.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, positive, negative, yeah.
That's it. As you say, that's life, yeah? That whole balance. Okay, so moving on to the lockdowns. When I wrote this in August, we were talking about just, lockdown 1. We're now in the 3rd lockdown. So what has got you through each of the lockdowns, and have any of them been different for you?
Yeah, I would say lockdown 1 was actually the easiest for me. Partly because when it happened, I was almost 100% sure it wasn't going to be a 3-week affair, but was going to be much longer.
You were so right.
I just had this gut instinct that said this is we're in it for the long haul. And at the time I was teaching yoga, so I lost a lot of classes because of that, like every other yoga teacher. So nothing special about me, it's all of us. But on the other hand, I immediately, because I used to do online training as a corporate warrior in my past life, I immediately emailed my corporate clients the day before lockdown was already announced, because I was feeling uneasy about this whole thing even before it happened. And I said, I don't know if we'll be able to meet, but maybe we could do this online. They're like, oh, let's think about it. Sounds kind of weird because, I mean, think back 1 year ago, teaching yoga on a computer.
Yeah, exactly. Zoom, what was that? No one knew what Zoom was in March last year.
And people were just
Zoom is everybody's best friend. Yeah.
We're on fast dial with Zoom now, but a year ago, people were kind of not getting what I was saying, but I said, let's give it a go. And if it sucks, we're just not going to do it. But why don't we try it? And it might just, help with the continuity of your colleagues' practice and such. So I actually got a handful of my corporate clients online pretty much the day before lockdown even
Excellent.
happened.
Good for you.
And And they liked it because their offices were already shutting down and people were nervous, and then lockdown actually happened. So so getting back to your question of lockdown one, it was actually not hard because I had this routine. I'd set up my classes online, and my husband and I, we had basically said, we're going to continue with our routine. We're still going to get up at God
Yes,
unearthly
exactly.
hour,
Yeah.
5:45 in the morning, and we're going to go. We can't go to the gym, so we're going to go do a big morning walk. And so we'd go for these giant walks around the park and keep the fresh air going and talk and cook food and do whatever we could to just keep ourselves entertained. And in fact, during lockdown one, I almost watched no streaming services. So
Okay.
I had a really good, healthy beat in lockdown one. Two, things started getting a bit shaky. Signed up for Netflix.
Yeah, as you needed to do. Yeah.
It was getting dark. Winter, you know, the darkness is just not easy, especially in the UK. I'm used to much brighter places, so this is really hard.
So we're now in lockdown 2, yes?
Yeah, lockdown 2 was a lot about eating and cooking.
Yes.
And lockdown 3 has been a lot about sleeping.
Okay. So you've gone through a whole wave there, full of activity, routine, eating. Now we're sleeping. Okay.
I've definitely had more lie-ins during lockdown 3, and I think it's the weather.
Yes.
I also have taught fewer classes because some of the online classes had a little more dips in their attendance.
Yes.
Pauses. Some paused and restarted, some paused and haven't restarted yet. We've had these little dips along the way. So lockdown 3's been mentally the most challenging, I'd say. Not hard, but compared to 1 where I was happy bunny, lockdown 3's been quite tough.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think cooking's been the best part about it. I've learned how to bake bread, which
amazing.
I never thought I would do.
What type of bread is your specialty?
I've been doing all kinds of things. Focaccia. I've been making all these like fancy things with marmalade in them and stuff like that. It's been fun.
Great. So
cooking,
baking got you through lockdown.
Yep. Lockdown 3 is all about cooking and baking.
Excellent. Okay. So if you cast your mind back to the killing of George Floyd, may he rest in peace. I know you're kind of on off the social media thing, but when you were on there, did you notice any increase in followers, any approaches from studios as everybody tried to diversify? No,
nothing at all. I don't know if it's because I'm slightly colorblind and I don't notice that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I had almost, and I don't think it's actually anything to do with the studios in this instance. I'm just not that active on it. So
right. Okay. Could be that simple.
I would probably get not that much of an uptick in any of it through social media anyway, because of my social media engagement being not that
low.
Great. Not that great.
Okay. Cool. So 2021, here we are. We're March now. Happy International Women's Day. I should have said at the beginning. Choose to challenge is the theme this year. So may we all, from this day forward, choose to challenge.
Absolutely.
Supporting, all rights and steps for females everywhere. What is the rest of this year looking like for you?
This year's going to be interesting. So earlier, a few weeks ago, I started a new corporate job. So I'm back to working in corporate after nearly 3 years of being away. So it's a really interesting time for me. physically very demanding because I have to sit a lot more than when I was teaching yoga, for example. But I've not given up my yoga practice or my teaching. I've just scaled it back to teach the clients who really, really wanted to keep me on as their teacher. And I'm very honored by them insisting that I keep them on as as my client.
You had people insisting. How wonderful.
Yes. And I have to say, because I did have this conversation with my corporate clients and my individual clients saying, hey, I'm starting a new job. I am available after the classic work hours or in between at lunchtime. But I don't want to, crunch it if I didn't have to. So I wanted to get their feedback, and a couple of them actually sent me deposits for 10 classes.
What? Amazing. That's
so
great.
Like, okay, I guess I have to teach you now.
Yeah, that's great.
So that gives me, I would say it validates my feeling of me as a teacher.
Definitely.
Not the money part of it, but the fact that people want to learn from you.
Yeah, and they were so insistent to keep you.
Yeah, because I was like, hey, I can find you a gajillion awesome teachers. There are a bunch of amazing teachers out there that would be honored and happy to take on classes with super dedicated students. And I'm like, no, don't leave us. Okay. And I think some of it's that especially the last year with some of these clients, we've gone through this pretty crazy year together, and it feels like we're Zoom family or something weird like that. I don't know. But I was talking to some of them and I said, can you believe it? I've only known you guys for a year or a year and a half. And some of them said, I cannot believe it. It feels like I've known you for a lifetime, just because of what they've been through with. I've had students cry in Zoom classes because they've just had a really rough day with lockdown. Or, students just hold their hair and say, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And, you kind of chat with them and say, it's all going to be fine. It sucks right now, but it'll get better. And so I don't know what it is, but I'll just take it as they like my teaching style. And
good for you. Good for you. Good for you.
So I will be teaching just a reduced schedule, and then seeing where corporate life takes me, and then maybe circling back in the new year. Who knows?
Who knows? So are any of the classes public? Can anybody find you, or are they all private classes?
Right now they're all private classes. They're with corporate clients and one-on-one clients.
Okay.
We'll see when MoreYoga reopens, if because obviously the schedule is going to be up in flux. So we'll see how that lands. I would love to go back and teach at least one class in Wembley at MoreYoga Studio.
We love Wembley.
We're Wembley people.
Wembley family. Yeah.
I just love that studio, and I loved some of the students I had at the Wembley studio. So we'll see if it works out for me and for the studio. That'll be awesome. But if not, there'll be some other time.
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
If not, I'll just come and check out your class.
Please do. You're welcome. Welcome. Before I open the floor to see if Raquel has a question, and if you're watching this on catch up, please do type into the comments box any questions, and Rama will respond. So just before questions, is there any last points you would like to add? Anything you want to go back to add a bit more? Anything you forgot? This is kind of your little wrap up section before any questions.
I don't have any. I'd love to hear questions if there are any. Because I've had this really long and weird and complicated journey through 11 years of mulling. I'm sure there's questions that come up in people's there'll be questions in people's minds. Probably they may want to ask me. But No, I just really enjoyed our chat.
No, it's been wonderful. Yeah,
And
I look forward to meeting you in real life.
yeah, one
Maybe
day
at
I
Bread
will.
Ahead in Wembley. We could meet
Yeah.
there
Yes,
because I love that place.
that's a nice little place,
It's a
and
nice little place.
there's a lot of open space over there where you can
Mm,
just sit out and chat on a nice warm day.
yes,
So
exactly.
I'm
We'll
looking
do that.
forward to that.
We will definitely do that. Okay, so no pressure, Raquel. If you have a question, oh, she does. Hold on, let's see. I'll take my glasses off. No question. It was really nice to hear Ruma's journey. Okay, no problem, no pressure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raquel, for listening.
Problem. I joined a little bit late because I went to pick up my laptop on the other side of London, and yeah, and then I suffered what was a commute that I forgot about.
Oh, well, thank you for doing that, because you know the laptop now works because you're here tuned in.
Yep. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rama, it's been a pleasure hearing your journey. Wish you all every continued success back in the corporate world. The data sounds fascinating, and I look forward to hearing all about it. Keep safe and well.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of evening.
Thank you for your time, and
most
I look
welcome.
forward to coming to one of your classes one day.
Definitely. Take care.
Take care.
Rest well.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. So coming up on the 12th, what's the date today? The 8th. So the 22nd of March, the next yogi journey will be with Paula Hines, who's a senior teacher and a columnist for MoreYoga magazine. So watch out for that next yoga journey. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.